and it'll just sort of jump over.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they'll jump over to us. That's really what's going on. We're just gonna go live
They'll jump to us.
Session. Yeah.
Got it.
Oh, you know what?
And will we see participants, and Blake, will you be controlling them? Will they all be muted out? Will it be in sort of seminar mode, or will they be able to unmute and ask questions at some point?
No, I'm just gonna have to pull the questions from Eventee and put it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will just be us. No one else will join.
But we'll be able to see how many people are in, or names, or no?
Yeah. No. Okay. You're not gonna be able to see anyone. No.
Okay. So do we have an internal chat if we need it?
Yeah, just here in Zoom.
So only us can see that part of it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if I blast everyone, it's everyone on this panel, everyone on the screen.
Right.
Okay.
Marcus, where are you? Where are you located? You're on mute.
I'm in Austin.
Okay, cool.
Thanks again, you guys, for doing this on a Saturday. Thanks for doing it and then doing it on a Saturday.
Anything for you, Craig. Anything for you.
I don't know what day it is.
All right, I'm gonna. Oh, actually, no. I was gonna take my video down, but I'll wait.
Oh man, secret handshake.
There it is.
You know what?
There it is.
It's a weapon. It's a weapon.
They do not sell them anymore. I went back to get more, and they're gone.
Gone.
And we should have made more. They were so popular. But there you go. So I'm so happy. And Chase, you got one too, right?
Talking about the opener?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that thing.
You got to be careful. Break the top of the beer bottle or beer.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a weapon.
It'll last generations.
Hand it down proudly.
And also, I'm sure you guys realize this. This is also an opportunity for this community to hear what you're doing too. For all of us. So I don't want that to be overlooked in the storytelling.
For sure.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna begin recording just so we can, just be all set before we go, before we officially start. Yeah, we got like 50 seconds till we get started.
Hey Blake, are you going to be on?
I'm just gonna do the intro and then I'm gonna hand it off to Jason. Yeah, then I'm gonna still be here, but I'm just gonna take my video off.
All right, because I want to do a picture. Why don't I do a picture right now?
Yeah, that's worked.
Here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Bam. Beautiful. I'll share that.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna start in about 15 seconds.
How much time do you like to give to get everybody in the room? Or do you
What
want
do you
to
mean?
kick it right off? Do you allow a minute, or we just go hot?
Yeah, I'm gonna do an intro right now, then we're gonna go into it. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for our attendees. Thank you for coming. This is our last session, last but not least. And we're gonna go ahead and kick it right to our moderator and our panelists. This session is brought to you by Moonshots Capital. It is all about from military service to entrepreneurship. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off to Jason.
Thanks, Blake, and thanks to the Columbia venture community for having us here today. For those of you who might have been looking at the program, wondering if I'm the same guy listed, yes. Unfortunately, a few months ago, I decided that I wasn't going to get a haircut until I got a vaccine, and I might have been slightly over-optimistic on the rollout timeline. But I am indeed Jason Dempsey, proud to be here, representing both Moonshots Capital and Columbia University. I direct research on military and veteran entrepreneurship issues for Moonshots Capital. I'm also the executive director for the Columbia Center for Veteran Transition and Integration, and a proud Columbia graduate, along with my brother from another mother, Craig Cummings, who's helping to sponsor this panel. Today, before I go to these panelists, I just want to say, veterans have always played kind of a key part in entrepreneurship in the United States. And the first big boom of veteran entrepreneurship was the post-World War II period, where most of the small businesses and a lot of the growth we saw in the American economy was driven by the cohort of post-World War II veterans who went out, took advantage of the GI Bill, used it for education, training, and to start small businesses. And we all know the kind of the legacy effect of that. Now, when we're talking about diversity, of course, the implementation of the post-World War II GI Bill was not equal. And a lot of particularly Black American veterans were shut out from the benefits that their white counterparts received. But it did build, at least for white veterans, a huge base upon which to build an entrepreneurial movement post-World War II. Today, we see something similar. For those, I'm sure nobody really follows veteran education policy very closely, but for those who do or don't, post 9/11, we have now a new surge of veterans entering into the workplace. Approximately 230,000 veterans leave service every year. And with the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is in some ways a successor to the post World War II GI Bill, a lot of veterans have a very generous benefit by which they can take advantage of, again, school, training, housing loans, and access to the kind of resources you need to start a business. But of course, that doesn't mean that the journey is easy. As you all well know, the journey is difficult no matter where you start from if you're looking to be an entrepreneur. With that, I want to do a really quick introduction of our three panelists. And we'll go around the horn to Craig, Marcus, and Chris to briefly tell us a little bit about where they're coming from.
Craig Cummings. I'm the co-founder and general partner of Moonshots Capital. I was in the Army for 17 years. Prior to that, West Point with Jason. I ended up leaving in my 17th year as a promotable major. I was about a month away from pinning on lieutenant colonel. And my time in the military was early on as a tank officer, an armor officer, and then I was an intelligence officer and served most of my time with the National Security Agency with pop-outs to do a PhD at Columbia, to teach at West Point, and to take some trips to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Great. Chris, or excuse me, Marcus. Oh, I think you're still muted, Marcus.
Well, there you go. I don't know anything about computers. All right. So my name is Marcus Carey. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I was enlisted for 8.5 years. I was in the military. I was a crypto tech, and I was an E5, meaning I was kind of like mid-level management in the Navy. My specialty in the military was computer related. I did cryptography, signals intelligence. I was stationed at NSA. Funny enough, this probably about the same time Craig was there. We didn't know each other there. It's a big place. I'm very technical. I code. I do all that stuff. I learned a lot of that stuff in the military. And for me, in the military, and I'll get into this later, the military was a great way for me to get out of being the poorest person I knew. So it was a blessing.
Chris?
Yeah, my name is Christopher Brown. I was in the Air Force. That branch may not be recognizable to Craig and Jason. It's the chair force. For 7.5 years, I left as an E5. And yeah, it's all fun and games until you ask for a couple of A10s. And then, and then it's a little bit more.
One team.
Right. Yeah. So I started off in air traffic control, and then I moved into ATC systems and helped with like data collection and safety systems and things like that. Because air traffic is, it's all about big data really at this point, and implementing the safety systems that it takes to run the national airspace system. And I took that with me directly out of the military, and worked with the FAA for some time before starting my entrepreneurial venture.
That's great. So for those of you listening, we've got an interesting panel in that we do have representation across the services. Obviously, we're missing the Marine Corps and the Coast Guard. But part of this, when we talk about veterans, part of the challenge that both veterans and civilian society have is figuring out, well, who are you and what did you do and what do you look like? And there's a journey on both parts in figuring that out. You can't put on a uniform for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and then, deploy all around the world and be in a fairly small bubble among a bunch of people who are dressed like you. They might not think like you, but, you're all doing the same thing, and then come back into civilian society. And so, it's interesting. We have folks who've driven tanks, who've done coding, folks who've been air traffic controllers, and folks who just carried, heavy loads up and down hills, like pack mules for a while. So all veterans are not the same. And neither are veteran journeys the same. But as we see this new cohort of post 9/11 veterans entering into the workforce, a couple of things you can expect to look for demographically is that you will see more racial and ethnic minorities than among civilian counterparts, but not necessarily in entrepreneurship. And there's a host of reasons for that are similar to the hurdles for entrepreneurship among minorities in the civilian community. Two, you also find a lot of folks that are coming out of the military and into school. They're more likely to be first-generation college students than their non-military peers. The one thing you won't see, and obviously, is huge representation of women in the force. And we apologize for having a little bit of a mantle here. One of the things that the military struggles with, at least by law, up until 8 to 10 years ago, the military was limited to about 15 to 20%, depending on the service branch, of being women. And so now that's growing. Now that positions have opened up, but we're a long way away from seeing parity of women and men within the veteran community. So a lot of overlap and a lot of both similar and compounding challenges to a lot of the things you've probably talked about today in terms of trying to promote diversity within entrepreneurship. So the takeaway is all of these guys, even though we're all veterans, are obviously not similar, and everyone took different journeys. So what I'd like is if the panelists would briefly, tell us a little bit about, you told us about where you came from in the military. Now tell us about your journey to entrepreneurship. What skill set, what passion, particularly what tools and networks, right, both inspired you and enabled you to get to your current position. And we'll start again with Craig.
Thanks, Jason. I left the military in my 17th year, and people thought I was kind of crazy for doing that. And the reason, for those who don't understand, is that if you do 20 years in the military, you get a pension for life and all those benefits. But I actually ended up leaving, coincidentally, the day that I had paid back the Army for the time I had done at Columbia doing a PhD. So for my civilian friends, I say that was sort of the earnout. And part of the reason I left is that I had to scratch that entrepreneurial itch. And for those of you who knew me in the military, like Jason, who's known me for over just about 30 years, I always sort of had that entrepreneurial DNA, even inside the military. And I had an amazing career, but I just felt like I really wanted to put my hand on the needle of the company and be able to move that needle. And so when I left, I partnered with some other military veterans, and my first startup was called BTS, and we put a cellular network on the battlefield in Afghanistan, of which Jason was also part of that story. Don't need to go in details, but I had experienced in the military. So this is sort of like bridging the two. I had experience in the military that we could not move data around on the battlefield quickly enough. Like we would go into a mission and we would grab cell phones and different data, and then we'd have to drive it back to a base, and then we'd go through it and learn about, what we had discovered at that objective. And so I knew there was this need for real-time communications. And so with some friends, we conceived this idea of a cellular network on the battlefield, which hadn't existed. It was mostly just push to talk, walkie-talkie, if you will. And anyway, the Army ended up loving that idea, and the Army intelligence headquarters ended up essentially acquiring our company. They bought our software so that they could deploy it sort of across the military. And then meanwhile, when I started to make money, I did some angel investing alongside another veteran, Kelly Purdue, my partner in Moonshots Capital. But then my next startup was a not military focused. It was called Ride Scout, and it was a app, ground transportation app, sort of organizing how to get from A to B on the ground. And we ended up selling that company to Daimler, maker of Mercedes-Benz. So it's sort of military, and then 2 entrepreneurial stints. I was side hustling, doing angel investing. And then after I finished the earnout for Daimler, Kelly and I looked at our body of work at the time, and we had deployed about $11 million. And over 3/4 of that was backing military veterans. And we said, I think we're onto something here, because we were seeing a lot of these companies going up into the right. And that's when we decided to raise a committed fund, Moonshots Capital. And now we're on our second fund. Our first fund, we invested in 14 companies. 36% of them had a military veteran on them, Marcus being one of them. 36% had a Black or brown founder on there. There was only one Black, and that was Marcus, and we're working on that. And then 21% had women on it. So, and I'll wrap here, but as we've sort of zoomed out and looked at our investments, our thesis is we invest in extraordinary leadership. That's the tagline. We're military veterans. We'd like to back other military veterans. You don't have to be military veterans. But the same things we like about military veterans, the tenacity, the extra effort, the walls they had to run through in order to get in the room to be with us, that same grit is what we see in non-traditional founders. We see in women, we see in minorities. And so I think we don't brand ourselves as a non-traditional founder VC firm, but 86% of fund 1 and in fund 2, first investment was a veteran, then a woman. We're about to invest in another veteran. And so we're trending strongly toward non-traditional founders.
So in the military, a couple of things that helped me out big time. The military had a set of rules, and if you followed those rules, you could get promoted, or it was just rules, and everybody had to follow. And if you followed those rules, you followed that process, you could do whatever you wanted to in the military. And that actually is very translatable to outside and being an entrepreneur. There's rules to the game. You play those rules, you can win. The big thing that I learned in the military, of course, is I did cryptography in the military. I got out. I have crypto patents. I did information assurance and security when I was at NSA and stuff. I have cybersecurity patents. So being 18 and dirt poor growing up, one of the things was I didn't have access to computers. And at 18, I went to work. My first duty station, they had NSA had the internet before the internet existed. So I was using technology back then in 1993 that, stuff like Twitter and things of that nature, that stuff has been, we've been had that in the military for a long time, that type of communications. So cryptography, routing, switching, all this different technology at 18 years old. And we're saying 20 years ago, I had access to that stuff. So I had a leg up when it comes to operating out here in technology, and that's what's been the big difference between me and a lot of other people. Definitely coming from my background, I'm very technical. I know how to operate in a boardroom, but I'm super hood at the same time. So, but I also it just taught me how to, if you have to brief. When I was at NSA, I had to brief the director of NSA's office and stuff like that. So you take a kid from the hood, and then he's presenting to executives and all that stuff, doing research and doing all that stuff for NSA. It was absolutely insane. Also, the military, the GI Bill that Jason mentioned earlier. I have a master's degree with zero debt. I did my bachelor's degree when I was enlisted. By taking CLEP tests of all things. I did 110 credits on CLEP tests, and I conferred my bachelor's degree. And then when I got out, I did my master's degree. And so that's another thing. If it wasn't for the military, I mean, how zero debt, and then when I moved back to Texas, is this thing called Hazelwood Act. If you list from Texas, my kids go to school for free. Well, my daughter is going to school for free full time with zero tuition. So I got a free education. Now my daughter's getting a free education. And coming from my background, that's a big deal. So I think that's the advantage that I have, the technical background, the hands-on background, the education for free, all these different things. And plus the veteran network, even though I'm not, sometimes the military academies, like these West Point guys, they have a really good, tight little network. But if you're a veteran, you're a veteran. So it's a really sensational network, because if you look at a lot of these, even today, a lot of these amazing companies like Lowe's and things of that nature that I actually shop at, they have veterans at the head of the companies. And if you look, Palo Alto Networks, and they're the biggest network security company right now. All these companies have veterans for you to look at, to aspire to, like, man, if this guy can do it, I can do it. You know what I'm saying? And that's the kind of bravado that the military gives you. You can do anything. Just tell me how to do it, and I'll freaking do it. That's how the military affects you.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely follow that up with the same sentiment. I think one of the big things that you get out of the military is you get that strong kind of initial framework around followership, and that followership is really what helps you kind of, you learn how to operate as a team by being part of the team. And then, as you progress into those leadership opportunities, and you get all sides of the spectrum, that when you come out in the civilian world, there's a lot of people who never experience that sort of thing. Some of them are able to set the boundaries and fall into the frameworks that are successful. But you're not playing a guessing game when you come out of something that's already drilled that framework into you. And so that was super helpful. I think the thing that I would add onto the discussion is, going into entrepreneurial venture by nature is a very creative venture. You're going into it to do something that the market doesn't have. And that creativity demands that, you learn new things. And so while, in the military and then in the service after that, we were playing with technology that, standard SQL databases, we were running PHP servers, these things that were kind of old web technology. And then my particular company, we work in the cryptocurrency ecosystem now. And the thing is even without the technical skills of what I do as a company now, nobody had those skills because Ethereum and Bitcoin weren't a thing back then, right? So there's this opportunity to, I guess there's a lot of people that come out of the military and they feel disadvantaged because they don't have a particular skill set. Their MOS was something that's not relatable to something directly in the civilian world. And that isn't really much of a handicap if you need to kind of find something, whether it be a team or starting a new venture. The ability of learning new things and applying those things into a new venture is exactly what you have to do to be a successful entrepreneur in the first place. And so I think a lot of the soft skills that you get out of the military, I felt, helped kind of move me into a confident position, knowing that I know how to execute on a team. You learn some of these skills, group dynamics, this forming, storming, and conforming, and then performing. It's this whole framework that I learned in leadership school in the military. And so you can bring those to the people that haven't seen that. And so yeah, I guess my main points are the military, absolutely. On top of the same thing as Marcus, I got my bachelor's and my master's both out of the benefits from the military service, and then taking that stuff and then applying it to new skills and figuring out new technology and just kind of running with it with all the stuff that I learned in service.
And I want to real quick, I want to jump in, Jason. Absolutely, Chris. Like when you're in the military, you get deployed somewhere, and you have to figure it out too. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's no manuals, but you got to do a job. And another thing that we had to do in the military that I like about the startup world is that you have to know your job and everybody else's job.
Yes. 100%.
And so that's a definite key thing for success for an entrepreneur. Are you willing to do what it freaking takes, even if it's not your job description? That's what the military teaches you.
That's great. Yeah, so we've taken a look. What you've heard is kind of a range of the experiences of a few military entrepreneurs. With under the guidance of Moonshot, Moonshot, we hear a lot of anecdotes about military entrepreneurs. But a couple of years ago, we made an effort and in a joint research project between Moonshots Capital, Columbia University Business School, and the Center for New American Security. We tried to really look broadly at the entire veteran ecosystem to see what trends there were. And unsurprisingly, right, there are advantages and disadvantages to being a veteran and trying to enter the entrepreneurial space. I would say one of the key takeaways we found is, it's hard for a veteran to do a lot of startups across different business lines. Veterans do, however, have an advantage when it comes to cybersecurity. And so we did find a little bit of a over-index of the veteran community within the cybersecurity world. It's the one place, right, where actually being in the military doesn't hurt your training, but you're actually allowed to do things in the military that you can't do with technologies in the civilian world. Craig's first company, BTS, enabled us to, roll up people on the battlefield in ways that obviously you wouldn't use those technologies here. Same with what Marcus did at NSA. But, right, if veterans want to do something else, right, it's a little bit disadvantages come in, particularly in a lot of respects where the network is. Obviously, if you're looking for somebody to do UI UX and you've spent the last 3 years in a tent in Bagram, you might be at a disadvantage of finding somebody with that skill set than if you spent the last 3 years, hanging out in a lab at Stanford. So I guess for the panel here and for anybody who wants to address it, where did the military support network, right? We all love our brothers and sisters when we find them, but they're not that easy to find. So I guess broadly, where did the support network either fail or succeed based on what your expectations were as you first started this journey? Anybody who wants to take that one on, go ahead.
I could start. So all of my military friends are lifelong friends, but they have remained personal friends. Those people that you mentioned, Jason, I've got a really strong co-founder with me, Alex, and then the rest of the team that we've put together at Zabo has definitely had to come through just finding a really good area for me to focus on, and then finding that support outside of what my traditional bubble would have been. And it was, my whole family is retired out of the military. My grandfather, grandmother, my aunts, my dad, my uncles, all of them. Nobody left the military as a working adult in my family, and so yeah, it was hard building a network to execute a business was something that I had to do from scratch outside of the military. Yeah.
I would echo that. But one of the really cool organizations is an organization called Bunker Labs. Craig is definitely active, been active in that. Bunker Labs has been a great resource, and it has connected me to a lot of people. Also, one of the things that I did is I went through accelerators, I went through Techstars, and I went through Capital Factories thing. So, and what's weird about that, like I said, I was super poor growing up, so I didn't know anybody with any kind of money. So when they say friends and family, I'm like, man, my friends and family think I'm rich. So, so the deal is that you do have to build that network. Definitely in the military, the enlisted people in the military mostly come from not your greatest backgrounds as far as economics goes. They say that the poor fights the rich man war. That's been a saying forever, and I think that's somewhat true, to be honest with you. But definitely, there's definitely some organizations out there. Even whether you're military or you're civilian, I recommend networking with people and sharing information, because a lot of times we want to be secretive. It's funny, in the military, we were taught to be secretive, and then when it comes to business, people want to be super secretive too. Like, oh, I don't want to tell you my idea. So my deal is share your ideas, network with as many people as possible, and then reach out for organizations that have your interest in mind. If it's a veteran, look for veteran focused organizations, look for women focused organizations, look for Latino focused organizations, look for people to help, and don't be afraid to share information. And also listen to people that have been there before. One of the biggest things I see veterans and civilians doing is they don't want to freaking listen. Listen, network, and learn, and you'll be a winner.
So before I turn it over to Craig, because I think he's got some key comments on this, for those unfamiliar with the military who may be listening, right, it's about 15% officer, 85% enlisted. And just by definition of the qualifications needed to be an officer, you have to have a bachelor's degree prior to entering the service. And also that's where, the military academies, West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, they produce a large portion of the officers for each cohort. And in our research and just through personal experience, we found that those networks are fairly strong. But there is a gap in networks for those who are then leaving military service, but they still need to complete a bachelor's degree, right? Which is often a lot of your enlisted ranks. And the reality of the way the military and American society works, there is also a racial imbalance there between those two. So we've really tried to struggle with, how do you build the network, expand the network beyond the people who are just sitting next to you and by definition tend to look like you. Again, nothing that everyone else isn't struggling with, but we also see it in the military, and sometimes it's even more condensed because we're coming from such a small pool to begin with. And I know Craig has been working a lot to try to both build an ecosystem and expand it. So Craig, if you could tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do in that respect.
Sure, Jason. One point I'll make is sort of drafting behind Marcus's comments is first company we bootstrapped that. The second one, Ride Scout with Joseph Kopser, also a military veteran. We came out, we were older entrepreneurs, right? We had careers in the military. And so this was our first rodeo. In my case, I'd had some prior experience. So institutional investors, they are looking for the repeat entrepreneur, right? I mean, I'd be lying if I said we weren't looking for repeat entrepreneurs and Moonshots, but many non-traditional founders like veterans and like minorities and women, they're not repeat entrepreneurs, right? And so you do end up going to your friends and family networks. And then if those networks don't have a lot of wealth, then it's going to be hard for them to write a $25,000 check into your company. So on Ride Scout in particular, what people were investing in was our performance in the military, our performance in the foxhole, if you will, and people knowing us. They didn't have enough to point to in the business side, but they had enough to point to from having served with us, having watched us. And so, getting more into your question, Jason, we are, Kelly and I are both Army veterans. We're kind of unicorns as well on the GP side. Like I've joked with a couple of potential LPs. I'm like, how many military veteran GPs have you invested in? I know the answer to that, right? So, it's like a full team effort from the GP level with VCs, and now we're seeing a couple other VC firms that are now being established by military veterans like Guy Filippelli's Squadra in Baltimore, and by Brandon Shelton with TFX and Charlotte. And so you're seeing more activity. Even pulling it back to West Point, what West Point is doing is I'm helping to organize West Point entrepreneurs, graduates. And so that, even with the service academy tight network, the entrepreneurial network of graduates is very loose. And so I guess in summary, in all these different pockets, we're trying to make different efforts, Bunker Labs, West Point. Work with the Capital Factory in Austin and try to do events hosting veterans. So, and then people like you, Jason, who are there watching, observing, thinking about it, writing about it, doing trend analysis, and you have a heavy hand in this as well. And then look, at the end of the day, what we need, and this is what's happening, is you need military veterans who are leading unicorn companies, your Ubers and your Airbnbs, and we're getting more of them. We just had Blake Hall, ID.me. He's crossing very strongly into unicorn territory. Sean Lane, Air Force veteran, CEO Olive.ai, just closed at $1.5 billion. So we need those stories. And so then the investors, when they see Marcus, Chris, or Craig, or Jason come out the first time, they know that veterans know how to win and succeed in leading companies.
Yeah, so there's essentially the way to describe some of the veteran ecosystem is building it from scratch, in that there's a bit of a concept of, I don't know who you are or where you come from, among a lot of folks who are looking at military entrepreneurs. And so they say, well, again, they're not repeat entrepreneurs. So it's normal and obvious for them to say, well, wait a minute, why don't you prove yourself? And so we're learning a lot about how do you guide veterans into the right pathways, and also how do you both overcome while respecting military culture, right? Because right, none of you in the audience are paying your taxpayer dollars for the military to create civilian entrepreneurs, right? You're creating a military that fights and defends the country in whatever manifestation that might be. So I'm wondering from some of these panelists, how have you seen that friction, right? Both because, the military doesn't necessarily want to let you go, nor, is it the mission of the military academies to, there's a rule, just for those who don't know, if you go to West Point and you're on the primary level of West Point, you can't buy a name for any of those buildings. You could be the richest man on earth, and West Point will not let you buy or name any of those buildings, right? Which is unlike most college campuses. To get your name on that level, you have to have been a 4-star general or a Medal of Honor winner or something that redounds to military service. Now, the academy is changing and adapting, and in various other places on campus, if you're a billionaire, you can stand up a hockey rink or you can sponsor something. But it's reflective of kind of a cultural friction between its core mission and then launching folks out. I'll just open it up for Chris and Marcus. How did you grapple with that? How did you deal with it? And what did you see in your journey between those two cultures?
Yeah, I think, and this is a question that I was going to have for you, Jason, as far as like what programs you're seeing with the transition. So I agree, the taxes aren't being paid to help military members come out and be entrepreneurs. There is this initiative that I know that we are currently paying for, as far as that help military members transition from military to civilian. There's various programs and stuff, but a lot of those programs are set up from the top down. They have this ideal of what the program is going to do for individuals leaving the military, but the reality is the service member is leaving from the bottom up, right? And so it's that first level supervisor, the second level supervisor that's really kind of like in key position to help that transition. And those guys, they're not helping anybody. They don't want to let any, especially if you're good and they see that you're a great asset. And it seems like there's this conflict of interest where you have the veterans facilities that want to help people transition, but the military doesn't want to see somebody good leave, right? And so I don't think it's implemented in the way that ideologically we would like it to. And that I first thought about this because when I was leaving, I had an old family friend of mine. He was leaving the Navy back like just after World War II. And I was telling him about me leaving the service and stuff. And he goes, "Oh man, are they giving you a hard time?" And he gave me the story that because he was in the Navy, when he told his supervisor that he was leaving the military, they had him on the bottom deck mopping the bottom deck of the ship for like 2 months, every day coming down and asking him, are you going to re-enlist, or are you going to stay in? And he said he had to do that until the day that he left. And then, of course, that was a while ago, and we've since kind of improved from that. But it seems that there's a want to help the transition, and I think that's what's important. It's not necessarily like molding active duty to kind of like do something in the civilian world, but when an active duty member has done their service and now they're going to come out, if we're going to pay for programs that transition military members out, it seems that there's a better, or there should be some sort of way outside of the interest of the military wanting to keep that member that would help that and facilitate that transition a little bit more clean.
Yeah, it's certainly a constant struggle. And I tell you, I was, for my sins at one point in 2011, I was working from the White House to help manage the Department of Defense and the Veterans Affairs rejiggering of some of these these transition programs. It shouldn't surprise, for all the stories of great leadership and innovation that you've heard individually, it shouldn't surprise any listeners to know that the Department of Defense is a massive bureaucracy. Same with the Veterans Affairs. And so, and also, frankly, it's not in the mission statement of the Department of Defense, again, to prepare folks to leave the military. I had one senior Navy official once tell me that when the veteran unemployment rate was very high, that was fine because the Navy had done its job to give those folks jobs in the first place. And that what happened to them afterwards was not the Navy's business. And so there are those cultural parts that we've got to grapple with. And even when we do have the right intention, you're absolutely right. We're talking about a massive bureaucracy that says, I'm going to put a great program in, but then what does it look like once it's subcontracted 5 times down to, your local base, and who's actually teaching a class on entrepreneurship as you might be leaving. So there's certainly some struggles there, and maybe, as bureaucracies everywhere, even in the military, for those listening in, there's things we have to overcome. Marcus, do you have anything on that? Otherwise, I think we can go to maybe a couple audience questions.
I'll just be real quick. The Navy called it Transition Assistance Program. TAPS is what they call it when you're leaving. When I got out to the military, the Navy didn't even have a class, so I had to go to the Air Force's one. So that tells you how big of a priority it is.
Yeah. So it's kind of up to folks like Craig building the ecosystem on the outside. Once Marcus and Chris have fantastic exits, then they will then turn and support the next kind of generation. But it's there's no magic bullet. Looking at now, we'll turn to some audience questions. The first question, which I'm not qualified to answer, is what does the future of military technology look like? And thoughts on this, Space Force. One, I thought the first episode was awesome. I thought it did go downhill a little bit after that, but they nailed life in the Pentagon. And that's all I know about Space Force. But I'll open that up to, you've got, whoever asked the question, you got 3 folks who really do have their kind of finger on the pulse of military technology. And for those who don't know, Craig and Moonshots Capital is co-located in Austin with Futures Command, which is really trying to figure out where does the military go.
Well, I mean, that's a great tee up, Jason. I was going to say that the military now is working much more closely with the venture community, with the investment community writ large, and they're almost establishing kind of like corporate development arms, if you will, out there looking for technology to acquire, especially through its newest command, which is Army Futures Command, which I've described as the biggest venture capital firm in the world, and the capital's non-dilutive, which is even better. Now they're not investing the way we do, but they are investing in companies that have cutting edge technology for the military. So what a lot of what's happening is it's almost like creating a marketplace where the Defense Department's gathering their challenges and their problems over here, and then they're gathering all the cool technology over here. Some of it with startups, some of it with the bigger companies, and then trying to match make them and sort of finding where the solutions reside in the civilian sector. So a popular term right now in the military is called dual use. And what the military likes is they like to integrate technology into defense, which has shown a track record of success in the commercial sector. So it's a de-risking, if you will. And so that's a very popular term. So I don't have much to say about the Space Force. I think we're all still sort of getting our heads around what it means and how they're going to move, shoot, and communicate, if you will. But the military is very forward leaning on technology, wanting to find the best technology. Marcus.
So I don't. The future of the military. It's kind of funny. I enlisted in the Navy in 1993, and that was like a demarcation point for a lot of different things. Prior to that, the military actually invested in and built their own systems in many cases. Around 1993, around that time, around 1990, the DoD, NSA started buying civilian software and started running civilian stuff. As far as from a technology perspective, before that they had been already outsourcing that planes to plane manufacturers, but we saw technology really in 1990. We saw that. Now I think we're seeing a big shift in what Craig just described, where because Microsoft was way out innovating anything that anybody could do back in 1990 and back in the 90s. Novell, y'all might not even heard of that from a tech perspective, but those were corporate companies that were doing pretty dang well. You've had this massive open source thing around the 2000 thing. Chris talked about that for a second there, talking about the PHPs, the Linux, and all that different things. That was the open source movement. Now I see this current movement then is actually outreaching to entrepreneurs, because what they see, like, who can innovate the fastest, and that's been the thing. Back in the day, DoD built everything. Oh, these civilian companies can do this faster. When I was at NSA, Intel was on base, right? So they can make chips faster than NSA could. Microsoft can make operating system faster than DoD could. And so Unix, and Linux made it cheaper to run some of the systems that we like to do in the military. And now you have all these different innovative companies like Chris's company that are innovating like crazy, and the DoD can't keep up with that. And now it's down to the micro level. It was Boeing, then it was Microsoft's. What this means though, it's going to make a lot of people some money. So if I was Craig, if I was invested in companies, I would be investing in that dual use technology. Those are going to win. So now is a great time to work with DoD, because they're actually allowing access to entrepreneurs, veteran entrepreneurs, civilian entrepreneurs. It doesn't matter. If you have good technology, you're going to get a winner.
That's awesome, Marcus. I just want to pile on you for a second. Marcus was our very first investment out of Moonshots Capital Fund 1, and his company ThreatCare was then our very first investment to exit. And Marcus sold his company to a large cyber company called ReliQuest. And Marcus, as I reflect in this conversation, just thinking about your path as Navy enlisted cryptologist, African-American entrepreneur, sells his company to a large cyber company that's continuing to blow up in a good way. Like you're kind of a unicorn as a diverse veteran. I mean, it really is. It's a tribute to you. So one of the questions that came in, I'm gonna grab, and I'm gonna throw it over to brother Dr. Jason Dempsey, because this is right in his wheelhouse. This sort of gets the book that he wrote is born out of his dissertation. And the question is, as veteran service members, how do you all feel about the state of America today, given it feels we're at war internally? And how do you feel the tech world plays a role in healing our divide? Jason, let's start with you. This may be all you, but we can pile on.
Yeah, it's a hell of a question. I mean, it's kind of the everything question. The main thing, and I'll start with, the second part, how do you feel the tech world plays a role in healing our divide? And I'd say number one, humility. We're here because folks thought that, technology might solve all our problems, and we kind of threw it out into the ether in a very ahistorical way. And again, it's not the role of a technologist necessarily who's, hooking and jabbing and trying to figure out, how do I get pictures of girls I want to date somewhere, online. But we can't then imbue whatever is built with some kind of magical powers. And then when those founders, having made tons and tons of money, become, by virtue of being rich, thinking that therefore that knowledge is transferable, that's highly problematic. And so the humility here comes with, there's not a single problem we're facing that doesn't have very loud echoes in our past, whether it's the McCarthy era of the 1950s, whether it's the turmoil and disruption that we saw during the Spanish flu influenza epidemic, whether it was the influenza and outbreak 20 years prior to that. These are all problems that humans have faced throughout history. And so I think we always have to be exceptionally leery that some new form or new means of communicating with each other is going to magically erase fundamental challenges that we face as people. So part of it would be, how do we figure out, so for one, I mean, and I won't hide this at all. I think the way our technology and the way we've rolled out communication and the way we incentivize, or the way these platforms are incentivized, they're incentivized for exactly the wrong thing. They're incentivized for division because it's an easier click, it's an easier sell. It's much harder to incentivize a long, meaningful conversation that's nuanced, right? Particularly when your delivery vehicle is something that somebody picks up out of their pocket, glances at, right? And you want to glance at it for 8 seconds instead of 3, right? There's no nuance that takes place in that incentive structure. So one, the tech world might play a role, but it's not going to play the role. It's not going to play the determinative role. And if we think that's going to happen, then we're doomed for failure. And I will tell you, it also ties into, as military veterans, the first part of this question, how do we feel about the state of America today? I'll tell you, the state of America today is exactly what we thought we were above and beyond, and thought, well, that's just happens to every other country. Like that somehow we're so exceptional that we can't fall prey to the same kind of traps, or the same kind of biases, the same kind of tribalistic impulses, that we've looked at in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places and said, oh, you just don't understand democracy. We've got it figured out. Well, January 6th showed demonstrably that we don't have it figured out. It's still a work in progress. And I will tell you, as a veteran, one of the most shameful thing, we can be proud of Goodman from the 101st, who was there, veteran in police uniform, doing great things. But we need to be absolutely ashamed of so far about 20% of the folks arrested being veterans, right? That's exceptionally problematic. And that means that we have a problem in our community, and we've got to figure it out. And it also reflects a problem across America writ large that we all have to figure out. And we have to acknowledge that this is not a problem that came out overnight. And there's not a piece of technology on earth that's going to solve it by tomorrow. It's only going to be us sitting down and grinding and figuring out what it means to be an American and working through whichever technology to actually connect both with each other and with core principles that we've somehow drifted away from. So you got that rant for free. I'll let anyone else jump in there.
I have strong feelings about this. And being like I said, being raised poor, I know I'm beating a dead horse here. Being raised poor, I know myself how technology is a force multiplier, and it could be used for good. It's a double-edged sword, for good or evil. When I was at NSA, we actually were doing research when I left. This was when MySpace was popping off and Facebook was popping. We knew right then and there that this would be used for misinformation campaigns and intelligence efforts. So you're just going to get an exacerbation of everything. You're going to get more hate because it's a tool. It's a force multiplier. You're going to get more hate. You're going to get more everything. But I do think that you also there's a massive opportunity for people to take this and use it for good as well. I don't think it's going to be on Facebook or any of these other social media companies. I think it's the civilians and the people that want to make a difference use the same tools that you believe the bad guys are using, because the tools are available. You just have to use them for good. It's like a dang sword. Like if you're a Star Wars fan or whatever, that dang laser sword can be used by the bad guys or the good guys. And so as a veteran, I'm always fighting for good. I'm always defending the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the oath that I took, and I'm going to do that to the day that I die. And that's what we need more people doing. Use that technology as a force multiplier to do good things. Help people out instead of hurting them. And I just call on everybody to be helpful to somebody. Don't be selfish. as Jason said, sometimes it's easy. It's easy when you make it. You know, when you get to Craig status, you don't have to care about anything in the world. But Craig doesn't stop. Craig is still out here trying to be a force for good. So I encourage all y'all Columbia students, all the entrepreneurs and veterans, be a force for good. You have all these tools in your hand to help people out, even over internet. I'm actually, doing I never thought I would get into Columbia, but here I am.
Beautifully said.
A quick sentence I would say on this is, I wish we had more veterans in politics, to be honest, because veterans are good at solving problems, right? That's what we do every single day. And we do it with diverse teams, from color of the skin to the color of their party, if you will. And I think a lot of reasons we don't want to go into it is because we just see this, it's so polarizing when we're so used to working as members of the same squad, if you will. But that's happening. There's a lot of people trying to get more veterans in office. I do think it would be good because I think we can align, find a lot of common points based on shared service and solve some of the country's toughest problems.
That's great. Yeah.
Jason for governor. Jason for governor.
Very heady question there. But I really appreciate your insights, Marcus and Craig. And thanks for teeing that in. I guess we'll end on a slightly lighter note.
Well, Jason, I don't even know if we have time for any more questions.
You're right. I don't know.
As we wrap, but I do want to so Chris and Zabo, what we tagline them, the plaid of crypto, if you will, that does serious technical plumbing work, if you will, connecting cryptocurrency accounts and wallets. And he's just crushing. And so I just want to throw some love on to Chris and his co-founder, Alex, and Zabo for what they're doing. And they're getting so much interest right now. They're just holding on for dear life. It's the right time.
Yeah, indeed. Just got to facilitate, right? You got to facilitate the pipeline. So
yeah, and so it's great that Jason and I love working with veterans. I know you two do as well. Any deal that anyone sees that has a Navy SEAL, an Air Force pilot, Air Force air traffic controller on the team, we want to see it at Moonshots. And I'm Craig at moonshotscapital.com. But you don't have to be a veteran. We love strong leadership. That's how we invest. So any early stage deals, we usually are late seed investors. We usually lead late seed rounds, or Columbia University graduates too, of course. We're big fans of the school and the talent that comes out of Columbia. So that's the quick self-promote on Moonshots Capital.
Marcus, any last comment?
No, thanks for having me. Again, I think that everybody that's looking at this now and in the future, you can be a change for difference. I think technology has equal, opportunity, just like anything, to unite people and to build amazing things and to change lives. Technology totally changed my life. And working with people like Craig, that took a chance on me, and it just shows you that, look, you have to keep your network super strong. Don't burn any bridges, and just be a good person. Don't be a douchebag. I hope that's not too terrible. Just don't be a jerk. Treat people great, build good things, help people out. That's all I got.
Rock on. Yeah. True words. All right. Well, Chris, any?
Yeah, no, I couldn't say any better than Marcus. I stand behind everything he just said. So
thanks everyone for joining us. The last plug is if and when we get back in person, stop by Kent Hall at Columbia University, swing by the newly established Center for Veteran Transition Integration. We hope to see you and talk more about building a new generation of veteran entrepreneurs. Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you, Jason. First, I just want to say this is amazing, amazing panel. Such a great way to end the conference on. As I said in the beginning, last but definitely not least, this was a really amazing. Wow. Honestly, I'm still kind of speechless. Thank you so much. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Moonshots Capital, for being a sponsor for the conference. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Marcus. And on that note, we're going to close. Thank you for everyone who came to attend the conference. And please, if you're interested in CVC, check us out online at columbia.bc. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.